When exiting here, I need to keep in mind that I'll have to check for all kinds of road users. Pedestrians on the sidewalk, there's a bicycle path so there could be some cyclists, then motor vehicles and so on. I check that to both sides. Here at this stop, I'll be turning left. Remember to come to a complete stop, do the verifications to the sides, then central mirror, left mirror and blind spot to the left before turning. So always do your verifications before every turn and every lane change. Now let's rewind a bit. Notice this little plate under the stop sign. I'll talk about that later. Here I'm approaching a diagonal intersection, and on top of that, there's no stop line. Students usually have a hard time figuring out where exactly to stop. So in a situation like this, try to imagine a line. And that line should go from the left, a bit before the point where the sidewalk starts to curve, to the other side, also a bit before where the sidewalk starts to curve. That's usually where the stop lines are located. And the rounded edge of the sidewalk is usually aligned with the corridor for the pedestrians. So when you stop, try to stop the left corner of the car just a bit before that imaginary line. And why the left corner? Because it's that part of the line that's closer to us. If you align the right corner, you're stepping on the line. Then, if you don't see enough to the sides, you can advance slowly until you do. We need to turn into the first available lane, so that's what I do here. Now, since I'm on a 3-lane street, I change lanes to the middle as soon as I can. And I do that for various reasons. The right lane is where there are often parked vehicles, buses that stop at almost every street corner. Sometimes it becomes reserved for turning further away, and in some situations, there will be a solid line that won't let us change lanes, so we'll be forced to turn, and that might not be what we wanted to do. There could be situations like this one, where vehicles exiting a parking lot point their nose a bit too far, so they scare students and make them swerve, which could be automatic failure at the exam. Now here's an extremely common mistake students make when crossing an intersection located in a curve on a multiple lane street. Here's a top view of the intersection where I am. I'm in the second lane from the right. In a situation like this, you'll sometimes have the impression that the lane that you have to go into on the other side of the intersection is the one next to the one you should go into, in this case, the third from the right. That's not the case. The lane you should go into is the second from the right. So the trick here to determine which lane you need to go into is to count on what lane you're in from the sidewalk. In this case, the right sidewalk. If you're stopped at a red light like I am now, it's easier, but you can check that also while approaching the intersection. In this case, I'm on the second lane from the right sidewalk, so I should go into the second lane from the right sidewalk on the other side too. Be careful, because if you go into the third lane from the right in this case, it can lead to automatic failure, since that lane is for the vehicle to our left. So if we go towards it, we're actually changing lanes in the intersection and we risk hitting the vehicle on our left. There are some exceptions to this, however. For example, if the right lane here was a lane reserved to turn right, it might disappear after the intersection. So look for hints, like panels or arrows on the asphalt, like the ones over here, that indicate what each lane is for. And here's one of those situations. The lane on the left here is reserved for turning left, as you can see by the arrow on the asphalt and the panel we saw before. So it disappears after the intersection. So in this case, you shouldn't count from the left sidewalk. The lane on the right is to go straight, so I should count from the right. I'm in the second lane from the right, so again, I should land on the middle lane on the other side of the intersection, since that's the second lane from the right. And this is what I was talking about earlier. From here, the line becomes solid, so the vehicle in the left lane has no other choice but to turn left. So try to stay away from the lanes on the extremities when possible. Then when instructed to turn, change into the appropriate lane. Now there are a few reasons why students tend to have a hard time determining what lane they have to go into in a situation like the previous one. I'll discuss that in a future video about vision. I'm going to turn right at the next intersection, and I'm going to change lanes in front of this parked car. I still need to check my mirrors and blind spot even if the car is parked, and I try to get my vehicle as straight as possible before turning. Here I'm going to turn left, so even if it's a one-way street not separated by lines, I still change lanes to the left before turning and do all the verifications of a normal lane change. This is still a 3-lane street, 1 lane for the parked vehicles on each side and a lane to drive in the center. At this intersection, I want to go straight, but notice this guy in front in the opposite direction. He's signaling to his left, so he wants to turn. I have priority since I'm going straight, but sometimes people don't respect priorities, especially in a case like this where the vehicle in front of me is turning left, so the other is taking advantage of the situation. So be aware that things like this can happen at the exam, and make sure you react to other people's mistakes. You can fail the exam because of other people's mistakes if you don't react to them. If you react to them appropriately, you should be okay. So try to anticipate them. Here's a situation where I can't go straight and the street in front is a one-way street to the right. There are three things that indicate that. The one-way panels, this panel, which indicates a tight turn to the right, and if you're driving in a country where the vehicles need to be parked in the direction of the traffic, the parked vehicles here. So if the examiner didn't tell you anything, it's because they want to see if you noticed. Now there's something a bit confusing at this intersection, and it has to do with the signs. There will be two other confusing situations in this video. I'll tell you where they are when we get there, and I'll let you figure them out and leave your answers in the comments. In the next video, I'll explain them. Watch the rest of this video before trying to figure them out for more clues. Now here, I'm approaching an intersection with a stop for all directions. Side note, you've probably seen some stop signs that have a plate under the main sign with a white cross with little stop signs at every edge. Those little stop signs indicate which sides of the intersection have a stop. In this case, everybody has one. It can also be written 4 directions, 4-way, all-way, or anything that resembles that. This panel, however, has only 3 little stop signs, but it still is, technically, a stop for all directions. So you might be wondering, well, if that's the case, why is there no little stop sign on the left edge? That's because the street perpendicular to us is a one-way street to the left, as indicated by this panel, so there shouldn't be any vehicles coming from the other direction, therefore, nobody's stopping there. If the street was 2-way in both axes, like in this case, there would also be a little stop sign in the left edge. Now when I say there shouldn't be any vehicles coming from the left, I mean motor vehicles of course. But you'll still have to check to the left too, for pedestrians, cyclists, which are also vehicles but sometimes ride going the wrong way, or any other road users that could be there. Another thing that can give you a clue that the street is a one-way is that there is a stop line on this side and there's none on the other side. At an all directions stop, whoever arrives first has priority. Like here, I stopped before the vehicle at my right, so I have priority. If multiple vehicles arrive at the same time, it gets more complicated than that. I'll explain priorities in that situation in a future video on stop signs. Here's the second confusing thing. Feel free to rewatch the video and pause if you need to. Here's another very common mistake students make. They come to a stop sign and they stop. There's a vehicle in front that's turning left. The mistake is that they start advancing slowly while the vehicle is still turning. Since the vehicle is turning left, it's coming towards us, so it'll get closer and closer as it completes its turn. So if you start advancing even a little bit, there's the risk of collision. And that too could be automatic failure. So in a situation like this, stay still at the stop and wait until the vehicle is past you completely. Here there's a stop just for me, so in this case I have to wait patiently until all the vehicles in the other axis pass, and sometimes it can take a while. A common mistake students make here is that they don't advance enough. They stay behind the line of parked vehicles so they don't see enough. You can use all the width of the parked vehicles since nobody needs to use that space. Just make sure that you give priority to any pedestrian that is about to cross as you approach the intersection, if there's any. After that, advance at least until the tip of your car is more or less flush with the side of the parked vehicles. Check for cyclists that could be coming in that zone, and if there aren't any, advance slowly until you're able to see well to both sides. Students are often reluctant to advance enough in a situation like this, but you need to advance so that you can see enough. There's no other option, you have to see what's coming. Now notice this panel, it indicates that I'm approaching an intersection where I can turn left either from the left lane or the middle lane. And this is the third confusing thing, so take note. I'm going to turn left, so I'll do so from the middle lane and not from the left one, and I'll explain why in a moment. Here's a different panel that also shows us that we have to turn left from both the left lane and the second one from the left. The previous panel, yellow and in the shape of a diamond, meant that we were approaching an intersection. This one means we're already there. Now I'm turning left, so here I should especially be aware of the following. When vehicles are turning, they should always turn into the first available lane unless indicated otherwise. But often they tend to overflow in the other lane or just turn into it altogether, especially big vehicles like the one to my left. He's supposed to turn into the left lane, but nothing guarantees me that he'll do it. So the best thing to do here is to stay behind him as he's turning, because if I turn into my own lane at the same time he's turning, there's the risk of collision. Again, anticipate and react to other people's mistakes. Now, the other reason I told you earlier that it would be better to turn from the middle lane is that if I had turned from the left lane, I should have turned into the first available lane, which is the left lane on this side. But then as soon as possible, I should change to the middle lane because the left lane is for the faster traffic. Now, that doesn't mean that people are allowed to go over the speed limit in the left lane. The speed limit is for the whole street, but sometimes they do. And at the exam, you don't want people pushing you in the back. I suppose you'll be stressed enough already, so you don't need that extra stress. So by turning from the middle lane of the other street, I'm already in the middle lane on this street. That saves me one lane change. Remember, the more maneuvers you do at the exam, the more you risk making a mistake. So try to keep it as simple as possible. In this case, I'm also turning right at the next intersection, so I'm in a better position to change lanes. And notice this panel here? It indicates that if I want to turn right, I'll need to be in the right lane. It's the only one that allows me to turn, so I should start planning my lane change as soon as possible. So the right lane where I need to be in order to turn is this one that just appeared. And this panel that's leaning to the right because it's probably about to ask me for a lift or something, it too tells me that I need to be in the right lane if I want to turn right. Which is usually the case, you need to be in the closest lane to where you want to turn. Now here's something you don't see because it's far. There's a countdown on the light in front and it's at 3 right now. In some cases, the light turns yellow when the countdown reaches 0, so I prepare to stop. Now something you can do while waiting at a red light is to analyze the situation. You have plenty of time to do it since you're stopped. Since I'm turning right, I take a look to the right. In this case, there's a bicycle path plus this spacer line on the left, so I need to be careful not to step on them while turning. Another frequent mistake and situation that could result in automatic failure, the green arrow. When the light turns green, it's an arrow that only allows you to go straight. A lot of students only see the color green from far and they start turning right away. In this case, you can turn only when the normal green light appears, so be sure to check the light carefully. Here's a tip. A normal traffic light has the red, yellow, and green lights, 3 bulbs. If the light has 4 bulbs, there's a good chance that the lower bulb is an arrow that only allows you to go straight. And that's usually the first light that will appear after the red light. So while you're stopped at the red, count the bulbs. So there you go. Stay tuned for more videos in this series where I'll be driving in a zone and commenting on whatever happens at the moment. Don't forget to leave your answers to the confusing situations in the comments. Like and subscribe if you want to, and if you don't want to, don't. See you soon.